Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our conference. Sorry, I forgot what's the name. Globalizing our community college curriculum. The GCCC, because we always say GCCC, the GCCC conference. My name is Wenhao Diao. If you cannot say my name, just remember it sounds like two question words: what, who, when, and how. When, how. I am an associate professor in East Asian Studies, and I'm also the co-director for the Center for East Asian Studies. And I'm here to welcome you, all of you, to our conference. And for those of you who are coming from out of town, I hope you are feeling the warmness of our welcome quite physically, quite literally, and please enjoy your time here in Tucson. I would also like to take a very brief moment to introduce you to our Title VI teams. So like I said, I'm representing the Center for East Asian Studies, and here are our Associate Director, Alice Yu, and Outreach Coordinator, Lucy Ling, who has been very, very helpful in coordinating all of this. And we have the Center for Middle Eastern Studies Director, Mahmoud Azaz, and where's Abby? She's still working, right? So our CMES Outreach Coordinator, Abby, and CLAS Coordinator, Katrina, are also outside. And we also have Circle. I can never remember the full name of Circle, so I apologize. But Kay Mackay, Associate Director of Circle, who's also here. And so the theme of our conference this year is Counternarratives. And to say the very least, it's a very important time to think about this theme because of the political vulnerabilities and changing global context. But also, I think it's very important to think about counter-narratives because of the three centers that we are working here, Center for East Asian Studies, Center for Middle Eastern Studies, and Center for Latin American Studies. We represent voices, cultures, societies that are often not really talked about, at least in the way that resonate with the people in those world regions, in the dominant narratives here. I don't know if you share these feelings, but every now and then I read the New York Times, which I do like. And whenever I read their coverage about China, and then I look at their comments and I feel the moment of cringe. And I'm like, you just don't understand. And I think that's exactly why we need to focus on counter-narratives, on the voices and perspectives and experiences that we don't get to see or hear through the dominant narratives and in the work that we do. And on that note, I think we're all doing very important work here. And I believe that all of us do work in the humanities, in languages and cultures, and also in arts. And tonight we have the privilege of listening to a talk given by an artist. And I think that is also another form of art of counter-narratives, right? These days, we often talk about big data, STEM, but really human knowledge predated all of the STEM fields, right? And so we really need to think about the importance of counter-narratives, both in world regions, but also in disciplines. So now I will have my colleague, Professor Ji-Hae Kim, assistant professor at the School of Fine Arts, who will introduce our speaker tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Good evening. I'm Ji-Hae Kim. I'm assistant professor at the School of Art and College of Fine Arts. It could be confusing. I'm really honored to introduce Professor Kyong Park today, as I have long admired his works and projects. Currently a professor at the University of California, San Diego, Kyong Park founded the Storefront Art and Architecture in New York in 1982, which is a nonprofit organization committed to reframing the relationship between the city and the life of its residents. He served as its director until 1998, engaging in public discussions on the most urgent issues and challenges that impact the constructed environments by bringing together artists, architects, and designers with the general public. Professor Park participated in the second Gwangju Biennial as a curator in 1997 and served as the artistic director and chief curator of the Anyang Public Art Project in 2010. As an artist, he has held numerous exhibitions, including his solo show titled Kyong Park New Silk Road at Museo de Arte Contemporáneo de Castilla in León, Spain in 2000-2010, and Imagining New Eurasia, a sequence of 3 research art exhibitions at the Asia Culture Center in Gwangju, South Korea from 2015-2018. Last year, Professor Park co-curated an exhibition with Soik Jung for the Korean Pavilion at the 18th International Venice Architecture Biennial. For today's talk, Professor Park will introduce the theme of the exhibition, 2086, Together How. Please join me in welcoming Professor Kyong Park.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay, hello. Thank you very much for coming. I'm very excited to be invited to speak here at the University of Arizona. And thank you for being such a great host to associate with a wonderful exhibition that is in the gallery there. I'm going to talk about the, as it was said, my lecture is going to be really short. I only have 115 slides. So, and so as Professor Ji-Hae Kim has described, that the exhibition that I worked on at recent Korean Pavilion was actually a project, an idea that I conceived and then proposed to the committee. Usually there's a committee to select who the next artistic director of the Korean Pavilion for the Venice Biennale. And they accepted this idea, and it was called 2086, Together How, with a question mark. And then with Soik Jung, we together developed this concept through the exhibition. First of all, it was about bringing together architects and community leaders and also artists to really kind of question about how we might work together to endure current and future environmental crisis until 2086, which is in the title, the year when the global population is predicted to peak according to United Nations. The premise of 2086, Together How, question mark, is to interrogate our Faustian ideology of progress and how we have sought unlimited material pleasure through industrialization, westernization, and liberalism, and much more. And our reparation of the past colonial exploitation would be the first step in our reconciliation with nature. This concept is developed throughout the exhibition. The first collaboration between the architects, we basically, Soik and I basically found 3 different communities, small communities in South Korea, actually through another project which we call Sivichon 2.0, which I'll explain later. And then we invited architects to collaborate with them. The first site is in a district called, very small district called Bedari, which is originally in the early modern period of South Korea, this was important port. But as you can see in this Google map, now the city has grown exponentially. Incheon City is actually a port, the biggest port, well, second biggest port after Busan in South Korea. It's actually adjoining Seoul City, which is the capital. And it is now the second largest city. In fact, the whole Seoul metropolitan area is around 24.4 million, more or less, which is 52% of all entire South Korean population lives in this region. And you can see here that, you can't see the mouse, okay. I should have converted to PPT. But is there a pointer here? Anyway, you see the highway right in the middle, right? Well, the city planned to build a kind of a throughway from one part of the city and went through this Dadari district and completely destroyed that area as a resistance to that freeway construction. That community activists and leaders organized the people to fight against it. As you can see, they did, South Koreans love demonstrations. There's demonstrations almost every day. And especially weekend, you can't go into city center in Seoul because there's demonstration blocks all the traffics. But as you can see, there's this press conference at Incheon City Hall by the group calling themselves citizens as owners. In other words, citizens are important in the governance of the city, demanding the recall of local politicians, especially the mayor, who's a kind of Mr. Developer / Mr. Bulldozer. And then also it involved many generations, their idea, including children. They also, Space Beam, which is the organization that we worked with. It's a kind of a organization that represents that community, a cultural center. And they also started a residency program with their performance, which is saying, no matter what challenge may exist, on their T-shirt. They also used 52% of South Korea lives in high-rise apartments, and 52% South Korean population is 52 million. South Koreans can somehow love this number 52. And they used the apartment building as a sort of a billboard for their resistance movement. Of course, they also demonstrated right on the site during the construction. And somehow they managed to stop the construction now. And then as a result, they wanted to figure out what they could do with this now an empty land. So Incheon Citizens Roundtable on Urban Regeneration and Innovations to correct all the urban mistakes according to their view. Installation of Badari Historic Village Information Map to kind of start making citizens think about communities, people to think about that there's a history in this district and how important that is to preserve. Also, urban repair centers were created. It's called Uppercuts. It's kind of illustrating their kind of struggle with the developments as a sort of kind of a boxing match or with some connotations of violence. Installation of benches for community meeting places and alleyways throughout this area, because this is where a lot of elder people kind of like to hang out, right? Sitting around in what is called a very important kind of urban feature of the Korean city is alleyway, 골목, which is basically small, narrow pedestrian streets, as well as what they call ghost marketplaces to bring people together. Marketplace is always where people find themselves, meet other people, and to trade, gossips and stories and other news. That's Koreans are really good. South Koreans are really good at, even in a very high-tech society. It is still the rumors and gossips are very good. That's why a lot of international companies actually do their beta testing in South Korea, because it spreads really fast. Space Beam Residency, Neighborhood Mobile Art Factory, and then lots of new upstart businesses like this cultural, let's say, store, so to speak, direct translation would be. And then a cafe called Starting Point, which is a gallery and a cafe. And then a bookstore called Flying Butterflies, kind of translation. But this district originally used to be a lot of bookstores before they have disappeared. So part of it is to bring them back. And this is Space Beam Space, where they took an old building and cut two-story buildings, quite interesting. And they turned it into like classrooms, meeting space. In fact, they really historically recorded that area architecture and histories, almost like kind of like urban anthropology, archaeology. They also had started kind of a seed bank themselves, collecting seeds from the community members. And they started to think about how, like meetings like this, how to develop the empty construction site of what the industrial road that they were building, and then transform it into green parks for the community. And this is kind of illustration of what they imagine that the park to be. In the exhibition, this section was titled "As a Ruin as a Future, Future as a Ruin," collaboration between Urban Terrain Lab and the Space Beam. And we invited local artists, painters, who have painted throughout their period of transformation of that area, showing how that development. I mean, South Korea is all about developments, hyper developments, and how that is also bringing some of the negative impact to some residents who are actually displaced, or their memories are destroyed. And the violence of this development is portrayed on these paintings, which was reproduced in vinyl and was cut out. And you can see some, you can see some blank area in the bottom paintings, which is actually a map of the islands in the Incheon Bay that used to exist. Now it's all kind of now is leveled and reconnected by the landfills. And in the center, in the totem, was a kind of photo history of the Bedari resistance movement, like the images that I've shown already. Now, Incheon area continues to be infilled. In fact, South Korea is the second most country with the second most land infill extensions to the ocean than after Netherlands. So Incheon Bay could, like in this picture, could be completely filled in the future. Of course, you have to have a golf course, because South Koreans also crazy about the golf. And then, or that if it's flooded with sea rise, then it could return to the original shoreline, so to speak, and it could actually recover, hopefully. What is very unique in the western coast, southern, actually mostly western coast of South Korea, unique in the worldwide, and also on the eastern coast of China, is the mud flats. Incheon actually has one of the highest level of tide differences, and it has enormous mud flats that has historically was provided for seafood production. Another project was called Destructive Creation. It was a collaboration between SOA, which is a Society of Architects, and Udang Tang Tang, which is a group of young people who's revitalizing cities' old center-like markets and hosting local culture-based guerrilla events to explore how contemporary nomads could help to revive local legacy. This is actually an empty house. Actually, this house is Japanese house that was built during the Japanese colonial period because the Gunsan was one of the major port to send rice and other agricultural products for Japanese consumption. And here is a news report about how 2,349 houses are actually empty in the center of Gunsan City, which is about 250,000 population. So what happened in South Korea is that what happened in the United States some time ago, that the center is starting to decay and then expansion out to the suburb, but it's not like a sprawl like here, like Phoenix or Tucson, but it's more high-rise complex apartment buildings. What is beginning of what they call urbanists called donut, which is empty at the center, but quite fat and rich in the suburbs, right? So SOA documented all these empty houses, and they kind of proposed that they should develop in the future into green spaces rather than to rebuild. It was inspired by earlier work by Udang Tang Tang, who built a very small, on the picture on the left, there's a little alleyway, the yellow bricks, small little alley. You walk in and there's two pictures on the right. There was an empty unused space. They turned into a community park and so on. Gunsan is known also because of the Japanese colonial period, city of strangers. Kind of like, if you know, like Shenzhen in China is touted as that. People come from all different places. So it is also similar, is continuing happening, but in a different way now, is that it's being kind of colonized by young generation of people, digital nomads, so to speak, most of them, who move away from Seoul City, metropolitan area, and because they're feeling they need a different opportunity to their future, away from heavy competitions, high cost of living. And so they're migrating to the outskirts. And it developed what we call relational population, is that because South Korea is a size of Indiana, 100,000 square kilometers, 1/4 of California, but it has extensive freeways and high-speed trains and all kinds of transportation, buses and other things, that it's really easy to travel from one corner of the country to the other corner, basically at 2.5 hours, and they're very affordable. So young people are start to live in different cities in the country. Some spend 90% in Gunsan, 10% in Seoul, or some spend 50% in Gunsan and spend 30% in Seoul, 20% somewhere else, maybe where their parents live, or so on forth. So what they're developing is a relational community based on what they were, what they're interested, the kind of work and ideas. Like these people are all not from Gunsan, they're from somewhere else, and they gather in Gunsan to work on a project to renovate a top of a huge roof of abandoned, what used to be Gunsan Cultural Center, and make a skateboard park, which is kind of influenced by American military base near Gunsan. And what they call is a DIT, not DIY, do it yourself, but do it together. The idea that working brings people together. And then also that local businesses that have also started from, let's say, middle-aged people from Seoul moving to Gunsan, and they start like a cafe or kind of a program. We found also this in other cities where they provide programs for young people from big city to come for the weekend or 1 week or 1 month, and they provide all kinds of projects things to do, working with local people, like in this building here, and it's called Local Rise, you know, and so the idea of localism, they have workshops, they have meetings, they have projects, and then there's another space we found that was like a maker space, and that these young people coming, they have a place to work, that provides tools, trainings, and then so SOA created these tools using old tools, hand tools. They didn't want to use power tools, modify them in a kind of interesting way where they wanted to make tools that not one person used, but two or more people work together to use one tools, like in this case, tearing down this old Japanese empty house. And then that was part of it was moved to the Korean Pavilion in Venice. And they also created kind of a complete three-dimensional photometric of the house, and created like a videos like this, which that they showed the rise of sea level that would take Gunsan back to its original shorelines, because much of the Gunsan was actually infilled from during the Japanese period when they built their own port there. And then another project was called A Migrating Future, NHDM Architects with an artist, Kim Worsik Kim. Worsik Kim was a person who I've known many years, an artist who works in migrant workers from outside of Korea in an area, a city called Ansan. And so this idea was to kind of investigate spatial temporal landscape of foreign migrants in rural communities around Ansan city. They mostly work in the villages, like working in agriculture because of depopulation of the villages in South Korea, or they work in the small manufacturing industries in the countryside. And so this is an installation of showing that they made six kind of, one of them is this 6 collages. One of them is this, where train number 4 that comes from Seoul City Center is where a lot of people, foreign migrant workers, comes to Ansan in a neighborhood called Wolgokdong, where they meet. This is where also the migrant worker first comes before they, spread out. And the weekends they come there, join together. And so all the different countries people come on this train, and it's kind of a cultural mixing line. And so they kind of imagine what it'd be like if that train itself turned into kind of this festival, a train of festivals inside, and then and they presented different things. But one of the things I want to show you is that also they made these beautiful drawings of called "The Home Is Not Vinyl," because a lot of these foreign migrant workers, especially in farm, they live in a vinyl house that is like a greenhouse, right, on the farm. And it shows, like, by the drawings you can see how they live by kind of furnitures, refrigerators, vehicles, toilets, even like cushions and bed and stuff. And it's kind of anthropology of the kind of living condition of these workers. And then this is they also drew kind of what could be a typical building in the center of this neighborhood, Wolgokdong I mentioned in Ansan City. And you get kind of this high density of multicultural spaces. Like this one is like where they sleep, like a really tight collective, motel, which is kind of similar to what is called, I forget the name, students. Yeah, one room, I forget the Korean word. Huh? It's not hostel. It's like tiny little rooms where students go, they study in another city, and they live in this like really tiny little rooms with a desk and a bed. And it's just sort of modeled after that. And then you also see like shops like, mobile phones are important, or calling cards, international calling cards to call their home, hair salons, and visa, photographs, document, visa translation, and so on. And then they also interviewed much of the foreign immigrant workers about questions about what their experience like in South Korea, and how they imagine about their home, where they came from. Finally, there was a video project called A Future by artist named Jung. And this was an interesting 3-channel video about a fictional story that he made up about a little baby child, a girl, who was born without hearing, vision, touch. She had no senses at all, but she could see the future in her mind. Future, what would be like it, like a prophesized image of a future of the climate endgame. So the government and all kinds of institutions was really interested to know what she is seeing. They tried to kidnap her. Some tried to kill her. Some tried to protect her. They made like special exhibitions. There was all kinds of theatrical performance, drama on television, movies, and she became this kind of a child god, so to speak, because she received billions of views in the media each day. And this is image of 3 people arguing. Is that one is the one on your left is a scientist who's trying to get into her brain. That the man is the government official trying to control the whole situation, and then the woman next to it is a mother, and they're arguing about, and so it's like kind of obsession about the fear about the future. In fact, I think that's what we are experiencing these days. We have uncertainties about our future, things that seems to be going on out of control. But the central to the exhibition, Soik and we made a game together. How? It's a quiz show. Let me show you. It's a quiz, kind of a television quiz show, 70s style, that invite visitor to play future climate endgame by asking to respond 14 questions on social, political, and cultural issues from various fictional representative of future organizations. 4 players at a time are invited to each session, ask these questions, and then they have to respond by pushing these buttons. And the video monitor in the front that you saw here is basically recording their responses, the blue, green, and yellow buttons, and lights go up. And so it's kind of a registering of their scores out of 420 color lights on 12-meter by 2-meter scoreboard, which is kind of influenced by the world's first computer in 1945, I think, called ENIAC. It was made out of a series of light bulbs. And it's about and then there's a text in front of it, which is about history of progress. And then their scores are computed, and they're reflected and written on the blackboards, handwritten, and the cumulative daily scores. And they influence representing global CO2 levels, the global temperature, sea level, refugee migrations, populations, water, Gini coefficient, all of these things, right? So, so these are fictional characters. They're generated by AI. And so, like, for example, here is Sheikh bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Well, no, actually, this is actually, I can't see it here. But It's too small. But Elijah, I can look at here. Elijah Kim is a bishop of Church of GDP, Gross Domestic Product in Seoul. So he asked a question like, we are facing serious crisis. People no longer believe in GDP. How can we convince people to believe the doctrine of growth forever that would take us to paradise? Number one, tell them the growth forever is the only way to enjoy life and that it's impossible to do with less material consumption. Two, tell them that those who will not join the Church of GDP will burn in hell. Three, perhaps we should join Church of Degrowth. Now, Tenzin Dorji is the Deputy Vice Minister of Global Council of Love from Thimphu, which is in Bhutan. And the question is, the world is short of love. We must raise production of love so that we can live more harmoniously. How can we increase production of love and distribute it widely and equally throughout the world? One, instead of GDP, we should raise GLP, gross love product. Two, greater GAP is only possible through the greater GDP, or three, greater GLP is only possible by lowering GDP. Okay. And then this is, on the left is Mohammed Ali Hassan. He's the Secretary General of Union of Nomadic Stateless Citizens. And then on the right is Mohammed bin Salman Rushdie, who I mean, names the places all picked based on certain issues, right? Like I picked like Mohammed bin Salman is the Crown Prince of Saudi, right? You know, but then I put the Rushdie, Salman Rushdie, which is Iranian, right? Persian, right? So, you know, Arabs and, you know, Persians, you know, kind of, you know, differences, right? Anyway, the Crown Prince is not in Saudi. He's actually in Russia. It's the Bartovsk. And we must protect our resources from eco-terrorists. They are reducing our profit and the customer services. To continue the creative destruction of our planet, we must, one, continue to bribe politicians, right? Two, buy out renewable energy industry. Three, give up fossil fuels and invest in eco-terrorist projects. Now, you know, this is kind of strange, right? Because even just a few months ago, we had this huge COP23 gathering, and the leader was, it was in Dubai, right? I mean, Dubai is not exactly the most environmentally sustainable city, right? And the next one is going to be in where? You know, it's going to be in Azerbaijan. What is the city? Oil city. God, anyway. But you know, the COP23 was led by Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who's the president of Supreme Petroleum Council, the United Arab Emirates, and Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, which is a state-owned oil company in UAE. So, I mean, you kind of, you know, take that, spin it around your head. And then Angela Berkeley is a senior advisor of Center for Teutonic Civilization. She's from Halle-Neustadt, which is a place I worked before. It's like the biggest communist utopic city that East Germans built. And our great replacement is now turning into great displacement. Our cities that we leave behind as we move to better climates because of global warming are taken by the wretched colored people. How can we keep them, sorry, misspelling, them from destroying our great Teutonic heritage? One, build a city wall, keep them out. Two, burn and destroy our city so the barbarians cannot move in. You know, it's like burn and slash war, right? Warfare. Three, they can stay in our city if they maintain them until we come back, you know. And then, well, this one, okay, Alfred Ray Prince is the regional director of Jackson Hole too rich to fail Security Service Incorporation. Our tech billionaire clients are now under siege from marauders and barbarians who are desperate for water and food in our underground mansion. Our clients should enjoy their swimming pools, home theater, wine bowls, and I forgot the bowling alleys, without any disturbance. What should we do? Give them some water and food, make them go away. 2, massacre them to set example so others would not come. 3, help fuel them so that they can help us to protect from others. Anyway, so, I mean, it goes on, you know, there's more, okay? And let me pick one, Namja here, right? He's called Daleksa, which is a flower voice Korean male androgynous K-pop, right? But he's the West mix. He's a customer service director, theme park for self-assured destruction in Anaheim. Parody of mutually assured destruction, remember that, MAD during the Cold War. This theme park, built for now defunct Disney World, offers all of your most feared climate ingrained scenario in a highly realistic, immersive experience. We ask you, what is your worst nightmare about the future, right? Feared future. 1, losing my home and property under the rising sea or, you know, a burning wildfire. 2, having to move to another country because of rising temperature. 3, losing my farm to drought and desertification. So as a result of, let me put this back on here. Oh. Actually, I still need to see the screen. And so the result of those scores from these games, I started to write annual report. And this is something like 2000, I don't know, 48 or something. And this shows that, this is 2045. Borders of nation states are under increasing attack. They are on the verge of collapsing. And not just because the continuous, relentless rise of climate migration. Rather, they are being challenged by 2 other ways. Firstly, borders are now increasingly being seen as a colonial apparatus and heritage. The idea that it was to protect the sovereignty of territorial state born out from Treaty of Westphalia, 1648, in the Holy Roman Empire, which is north of Italy, is the German territories, the colonization of the rest of the world ever since. According to Muhammad Ali Hassan, the Secretary General of the Union of Nomadic and Stateless Citizens in Mogadishu, which is one of the fictional characters in the game, the border of today's are markings of colonialism that were embedded then and continue their control of the globe today, such as the division of Korea. Secondly, the climate migration, previously dubbed as economic and political migration, is now also being identified as acts of colonial reparation. The non-Western people claim that their movement across border is a movement to redeem their compensation for the centuries of exploitations of their land, labor, capital under Western colonial liberalism, like, for example, Guatemala, maybe, you know, Banana Republic, you know, the pineapple bananas and all that stuff, overthrow of the democratic government by CIA, you know, and you go on. Another one is from them moving across imperialist borders are acts of political economic justice, along with reconstruction of their own cultural heritage. According to Amira Camelo, activist lawyer for the International Union of Reparation of Colonial Exploitation, which is based in Kinshasa, Democratic Congo. This is, you know, Congo is a place where the King Leopold II of Belgium held as his private property, and he had killed millions of people, like cutting off their arms and fingers and all kinds of stuff. And then such movement is strongly opposed by Angela Berkeley, senior advisor, you saw her, because German cultural history, racial identity cannot be polluted nor diluted by migrants who do not belong here. This is kind of stuff that you hear from the political group AFD. I forget what they stand for. German party, right? Nationalist Party. And then another one version is from 2037, is that Z, the global security elites of the world, founded by no other than Elon Musk. Okay, thank you. It's my interpretation of his character, as have been the next step in the evolution of the mogul's business model after Tesla and X and so on. Alfred Ray Prince, who I think I described already, was instrumental in convincing Musk to upstart this new industry that some experts have begun to call as parasites. Now, these are models of a company in Czech Republic who's building and marketing these tech billionaires' little shack, right? With the climate endgame generating multiple of complex and unexpected crises around the world, such as failed state, which kind of what we're kind of currently going through in the process of, that followed the failed banks. Maybe that's what's going to happen in China. The rise of paramilitary forces is in the making of the balkanization that is replacing globalization. Remember balkanization coming from the Balkan, the fragmentation Yugoslav in 1990s? And it was no longer sufficient, I'm sorry, misspelling it, no longer sufficient for companies like TRFS2 to just secure residential confines of the tech billionaires, with many nation states unable to manage increasing political and economic pressures. Their military industrial complex are now undergoing dramatic privatization, bit reminiscent of post-Soviet Union. The result is obvious. Following the history of French Foreign Legion, Blackwater, remember that's American Wagner Group, Russian, Executive Outcome, South Africa, FRERU in Congo, Rapid Support Forces in Sudan, including forces like Boko Haram and Mujahideen. Much more robust, capable private military, paramilitary forces were in need to protect entire infrastructure of many of these digital industries, especially their nuclear plants that power all important data banks, which they start to build. With their territories and network being so vast and competitive, the paramilitary forces of Z alone has grown to more than 1.24 billion personnel, with a budget that rivals once incomparable Pentagon, making Elon Musk has thus thrown himself as the world's first digital warlord. So you can see some of this in my Instagram, which is my first fling with Instagram. I stopped in 2050, but if you join, maybe I'll continue until 2086. All of this was kind of inspired by Ceviche 2.0, which took place in Gunsan City in 2023. What happened was that we did a kind of we made a game. It was kind of a Monopoly-based game, but more deviated. Immersive man standing. All these students came, like I described, these young people coming from Seoul City to Gunsan, and then he made them wrap stones with plastic tapes, which became their own identity. And these days, young people are very good at taking photos. They took it outside this workshop, and they just kind of like took the photos for themselves to put it up in their Instagram or whatever. And of course, we had to have this the dog that was part of came with the workshop space. And then the game starts, and then we made this kind of roadmap, so to speak, and all different players, different people, organizations, businesses that were involved in regeneration of the Gunsan Center. And they play this game. And what I really love this picture is because you see there are people on the table sitting there. They were commentators. Like in the sports game, you make a commentator about what's happening in the game, because they also knew the people and businesses and organizations. So they kind of mix up with the real and what the game is reality with what's game to play. We video the whole thing, and what it looks like is a kind of like a television set, right? You know, like a movie set. So I would love to, in the future, my dream is to do this game throughout different towns in South Korea, because I think this game makes really interesting understanding of the cities, towns, and villages, a way of kind of exposing, showing their culture and social structure through the game. Now, why did I do all these things? Let me see. Sorry, I got it. So let me read this. I'm going to give you a sermon, okay? Are you ready for the church? The premise of this exhibition is to wonder why we are so isolated when we are supposed to be so connected through globalization of information, finance, and even culture. Why are we so insecure about our future when so many of us are living at unprecedented level of wealth, consumption, and freedom? Why then is the idea of progress taking us closer to extinction than to our perfection that it promised? These questions together wonder how and when did the climate endgame begin? Allow me to speculate that this could be around 1492, the year when good old Columbus landed in America, or when the Greek conquista was complete on the Iberian Peninsula, kicking out all the Muslims. This was the beginning of the rise of the Western Europe, and later the West, that has come to define and dominate the way of life for many of us on this planet, including other forms of life, either animate or inanimate. But how could 90 men in 3 pitiful ships would lead to command all the oceans of the world within just half a century? Was this when the Christian world took a small step for man and one giant leap for mankind across Atlantic and began to dominate the world and its nature to start Anthropocene? Is the great North Atlantic garbage patch, that floating graveyard, to the gyre that allowed Columbus to reach America, and the triangular trade of slaves, cotton, and textile that begot the Western colonial imperialism? Setting off the globalizing chain of production, consumption, and waste was then the 1492, the year when we truly became the slayer of the earth, no longer its caretaker. What about the third of 150,000 tons of silver and gold that the Spanish Empire extracted from the mountains of Peru and Mexico, that was used to pay for its trade deficit with China? So, you know, trade deficit with China is not just recent memory. Queen Elizabeth I used 3/4 of the profit from 4,700% return by the pirate and the slave trader named Sir Francis Drake to clear England's entire foreign debt. What about the British India Company's opium trade under Queen Victoria helped to pay for the British trade deficit again with China. Were they set forth by the same gyre that produced the great North Pacific garbage patch, a dirty laundry of a history that was never washed. You know, this is called a patch, right? You know, it's like the size of Texas. What about 4.25 million South Asians who served in the British India Army to defend Britain in both world wars? Were they compensated equally as the English soldiers? What about the destruction of South Asian textile industry by the British Empire that may have transferred the birth of industrial revolution to England? So the environmental crisis is not only about recent or upcoming despoilments. It has a significant history already. To apply equal level of ecological responsibility to newly and historically polluting nations altogether is really asking the former to forget centuries of industrial agriculture and technological pollution by their colonial masters. This is nothing less than extending the privilege of the colonial era into environmental era, akin to so many industrial and energy companies that left their pollutions behind to local communities after relocating and closing. It is as if the British Raj donated its environmental destruction to the people of South Asia as its parting gift to their independence. The future of climate remediation is absolutely bound to the past colonial exploitation. But will the profiteers of colonial and environmental legacy, the consumers at the empires of progress, pay back what they owe? They are barely aware of their own legacy of environmental destruction in distant lands and times when they are not even aware of such in their own land and time. Economist Utasha Patnaik once calculated that the British extracted about $45 trillion from India from 1765 to 1938, more than 17 times the annual GDP of United Kingdom today. This is on top of tens of millions, perhaps even hundreds of millions of South Asians who worked unpaid or underpaid to make the British more prosperous. And we're doing this continuously right now to people all around the world who are making only $1 or $2 a day. What is the statute of limitation on bringing past ecological devastation as a crime against humanity and nature? Higher population, higher production, and higher consumptions are the triad of progress. Everything must be more and upward in the growth forever economy. In this much happier feedback between human and nature than the mortality inferring Malthusian catastrophe, it is nature that must be sacrificed to the creative destruction so that our prosperous life can continue. So the idea of progress, therefore, is the most spectacular power that West has ever brought to the destruction of our planet. But can this be continued? Does it have an end? The Grand Master of the Temple of GDP may very well be Edward Louis Barnet, AKA the father of public relation, who happens to be actually fourth cousin or nephew of Sigmund Freud, who he promoted his books and his work. effectively translating the libidinal desire of his double uncle Freud into mass consumption. He revolutionized the capitalism of necessity into capitalism of desires. He turned perhaps all of us into Pavlov's dog. You know Pavlov's dog, right? Training, right? Story. In townside shopping malls, where we could unleash our stratospheric but never could be satisfied desires in the cold, windowless suburban Eden for our national wealth. Yes, we are told to recycle and reduce pollution and so on, but very few of us are brave enough to stand up against the freedom of consumers' choice, our most cherished form of democracy. We want to convert our cars into electric, but we are unwilling to make them smaller, buy less, or use less, or not at all. It's patriotic to buy and waste and waste. After all, we're not citizens anymore. We're just tracked consumers to further income inequality. But such consumptuous happiness is not for everyone, because we are not all equal in this wonderful world of voodoo capitalism and in autocracy. I fear that climate change will continue to favor the dominant race, economy, and even geography, as we have previewed in We Were Not All in This Together, COVID-19. Many nations in Global South, along with developing nations elsewhere, are conscripted to the front line of storming environmental crisis. Then I wonder how racism and colonialism, which were deeply sewn into nature and us, would react to the condition of regression when scarcity, not plenty, becomes the rule of our future. So, after surviving MAD, the mutually assured destruction of the Cold War, are we about to enter SAD, the self-assured destruction? In a race against time, Celsius, meters, NRR, TFR, ppm, ppt, MWH, kWh, and most of all, percentages have become the tarot cards of our destiny. As a scapegoat, they create a grand fantasy that the problems are all out there. But no, they are deep within us. We need to fix our broken self as a civilization, and only then can we reconcile with nature. But are we capable of such self-correction? Did the idea of progress in making us to look only forward strip of our ability to be reflective? In the era of controlling the future, which is what idea of progress invention is, or creating the future, not only that nature, but also of our own, is it coming to an end? If so, then who will control our future in the future? I say it will be history, but will not be of ours. History, which we always thought was about us and written by us, now wants to liberate from us. Like nature, history fears its own extinction, along with everything else that have encountered us. History now wants to be self-determinant and no longer wants to be the necropolis of our great deeds. The real universal history is not Turgot's liberalism, is the one that will put our history on trial for crime against humanity and nature. It wants to find out how in the hell we came up with the climate endgame. So this is the premise of the project 2086, Together How. And this was how it was presented at the Korean Pavilion for the Venice Architecture Biennale in 2023. The exhibition asserts that not only will the environmental crisis force us to invent a better eco-cultural paradigm, it will in fact be our best and perhaps our last chance to become a better humanity. Together, how, question mark, therefore, is the question that will take us to the year when our global population is supposed to peak. And remember all the way along the way, the crisis is not the environment, it's us. So you can actually get the public catalog. We actually published in Italy. It's pretty cheap, today's standards. It's a very small book. I forgot to bring one. Forgot it. My brain is no longer, it's completely dysfunctional. It's very small. It's like a little tiny, but it's, and what it looks like, something like this. But we also collaborate with eFlux, one of the most important online art architectural journal. And we made this Tomorrow's Myth series of essays by 3 people, Western writers were invited by eFlux, and 3 South Korean writers invited by us. And they're very interesting texts. They're around 3,500 words or more. And yeah, this is where you get. We also published it, one version in Korea later, but that is only distributed in South Korea. And I said Korea is not distributed in North Korea. Okay, so this is the end of the show. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, let me know. You're all depressed as hell, right? There's no tomorrow. There's no hope. This is your last lecture in your life.
A simple question. Why 2086? What is it about 62 years that is this point that you look to?
What's the point that I'm making?
No, the year 2086.
Oh, I mean, that's just an arbitrary number,
I thought maybe that it had some.
It's kind of like
some
also
deeper
like a
significance
joke
or
because all predictions are wrong,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Especially coming from UN, right? But I didn't answer your question. You could ask me more. Trying to get it.
Okay. Okay. I'll put it this way. 62 years. I'm not around.
Right.
Is there a softening of the blow of what we're facing when we think that this is?
Well, we don't really know,
Yeah.
I mean, many people thinks that it's going to be more like kind of like, what they desire about soft landing from inflation, right? Bidenomics. But I think it's kind of like, it's going to be more like, it's not a, French style execution guillotine, but it's more like slow death, and it's going to be really like, if I could like speculate, it could be very challenging and and it could be like a slow torture death, right? Like Guantanamo Bay style or something. But I don't think that's really that important. I think what's important is that to recognize, I gave this speech preacher, right? A style thing at New York like a year ago or something. And it was called what was called around WTA, World, I forget. No, WTA, World Trade, yeah, but it was a cultural forum. WTA, that's what I remember. It's like World Trade. WTA is like airline, right? Defunct airline, but it was and I gave the conference was everybody was architects mostly, and they gave all this incredible environmental solutions, like how to save Coral Gable. I mean, Coral, not Coral Gable, that's a town, right? The Coral Reef, so I mean, and the other, like protecting species, endangered species, and how to make non-fossil energy and all these new materials and all these things. And then I learned something from that conference, because I was the only one who didn't present any kind of design. I just said this, nightmare stuff, and I learned from that, which is, I think, you might disagree with me quite a bit about this, but all these projects are really amazing. They're really great, and in fact, the organizer, the curator, she said to me, oh yeah, we already figured out all these problems. They're solved. I said, wow, really? And then I realized, okay, what if that I said that all of these projects are just totally greenwashing? It's for us to continue to live the way we're living now. It was a kind of like do good things so that we just keep on growing and we keep on consuming more, wasting as we always have done. So I became very suspicious of that, because it basically, I think the key thing here was that not that all of there are greenwashing, was that it showed that we were unwilling to change, and we really have not understood the problem. We have technologies, information, and data, and knowledges, all that, but we are very short of understanding the problem. Yeah. So that was.
Thank you very much. Very fascinating, and I love the names. It was very entertaining. One thing I did find fascinating is that, like, so a lot of it, like as you spoke of it, it almost seems like a slow death, an apocalypse, all these type of things. And I remember a discussion where I think it was a group of writers or film directors. They're going back to the question of why do they constantly revisit the theme of the apocalypse, And we do see it in post-apocalyptic literature and films and so forth. And I was thinking about it as we were watching, because all these scenarios is frightening and it is jarring. But at the same time, I was thinking about, and I don't know if this is part of it, but do you believe that recognizing the issue, recognizing the problem with ourselves, as you pointed out, I do agree with you in the fact that the crisis is that we're not changing. We have this mindset of unlimited growth. And even though it was like, what was it, 20 something years ago, I'm like, it can't go on forever. Like, I mean, Starbucks goes up to this height it has to stop at one point, you know? We can't put Starbucks on Mars. Well, okay, maybe one day, but still.
Somebody else, something else would come. to
Yeah,
replace-
exactly. McDonald's, Starbucks, or they already have it, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So do you think that recognizing like what could happen and what probably might not happen or whichever, there is hope in analyzing a what if apocalypse? Does that make sense? Like by seeing this, there, and we can recognize the issues with ourselves, there is hope from seeing that the apocalypse may come. And if we recognize that it may come, maybe we can avert it in some ways.
Well, the apocalypse idea, right? I think it's always been our fascination, human fascination, history. I think religion, especially probably again Christians, religion, have really appropriated that and became a very powerful tool for acquiring membership and contributions, I say, and is enormously successful. I mean, it was once a state governance and also educational institution as well, right? So I mean, we lost that part of their power to this nation state, which is, by the way, I think is the most totalitarian form of statehood we ever had, and then which is another subject. But I think what we have is the fear of death, fear of end. And we haven't really, as a society, as a humanity, really explored that very much. We've sort of neglected it, you know? We sort of like, we don't want to deal with it, you know? I mean, as an individual, we are, you know, very little prepared to death. You know, the only thing that we do is the medical industries try to keep us alive as long as possible. In fact, I speculate they even would make, they have business model to make money even after you're dead, right? But we haven't explored really kind of like developed knowledge, even let's say science of that at all, in my opinion. This is something that I haven't really studied very much of it, so I'm kind of speculating and thinking intuitively, but it is interesting subject. And I think a result of apocalypse comes from our lack of knowledge with death, as much as we would cherish and knowledge about birth. You know, we sort of like abandon the other half of our existence. You know? The other thing is also, I think, is that we take ourselves too seriously. We value ourselves more than we really are. Of course, I mean, when you think about the Western world has brought to this world, it's incredible what has been revolutionized and accomplished. Western world has brought, I mean, you know, scientific revolution, discovery, urbanization, all kinds of technologies. I don't know, we're in the fourth revolution or fifth revolution, maybe. Each one of these have is enough alone by itself to change the world. But Western world was able to create one after another continuously for 500 years. And we're living in an enormously privileged time, you know. That gave us enormous sense of power. And we see ourselves as the greatest thing ever appeared in the universe, perhaps, you know. And this confidence, overconfidence, also hinders the inquiry, depth, and interrogations, and I mean, you know, really soul searching about who we really are. Because right now, it's all about money. You know, everything is turning into money, commodified, monetized. as money. Like, so when I listen to people who lived in ex-communist world, I mean, of course, it wasn't great, at all. In fact, maybe it's certainly better that I didn't become part of North Korea, right? But however, they do tell me sometimes things like, we had a lot of time. We didn't have to work all the time. We had a lot of time to spend with our friends and family, And we didn't think so much about money. It was there, but it wasn't all encompassing, our daily life. It didn't become a lifelong obsession, And if I were to kind of make you really I don't know, envious or something. In the Soviet Union, they all had housing, almost all. You know how much they spent per annual income in their housing? 4%. It could be 7. I can't remember the number, but I mean, that sounds pretty good, Of course, they didn't have a great apartment. I was flying in, when I was flying in Tucson, I saw on the hills, there were these houses that are really spread out, right? I was like, that kind of configuration is very rare to see. And what they didn't have, they had it in some other way. They had small apartments, their kitchen was shitty, right? Didn't have all the technology that we had. But in a way, they may be, like they may be, they may have lived more in the future with less,
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. Thank you for your questions. And thank you, Professor Park, for the wonderful presentation that I'm sure is going to give a lot of us a lot to think about. And yeah, have a good night. And thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, I went over